れから酒に手出しちゃいないだろうな。
飲ん
でませんよ。一滴もね。
結構だ。酒さえ飲まなきゃあんたまたやり直せる男な
Look
ん
at
だ。
this.
週に一度こうして先生に会ってたら酒なんて飲めませんよ。
私のはれっきとしたカウンセリングだ。
Sounds familiar.
酒飲む暇もないんで
This guy.
先生、こいつどう思います？
どうって何が。
Oh, is this the
ドクター・ライ
guy?
ヒワインの乾燥術をもってすると、こいつはどんな男ですか？
リヒャルト、私を占い師か何かと勘違いしてるんじゃないのか。
The guy who hung himself?
評判じゃないですか。先生は人の顔を見りゃ一発で性格を言い当てるって。
それは長年にわたるクライアントとの面接
Yeah,
の成
he's
果。
probably seen all kinds of people.
その面接の成果ってやつで、そいつが詐欺師かどうか見
It's
てく
quite
だ
the
さい。
question, but
詐欺師？これはダメだ。詐欺師をやれる顔じゃない。もしやったとしてもすぐにボロが出るタイプだ。
huh.
じゃあ自殺する可能性は？
それもまずないな。この手の顔は自殺とは程遠いよ。
How about that?
そう。依頼人はあの大富豪でね。この写真の男、エドモント・ファーレンはこともあろうに彼の息子を語ったんですよ。
すぐにボロが出ただろ。
いや、シューバルトは完全に信じ込んじまった。ただ、まだ謎が残ってるんです。なぜこいつがシューバルトが信じ込むほど息子の存在と経歴を知っていたのか。
How
そん
indeed?
なことは本人に聞いてみりゃいいじゃないか。
いや、
筆跡鑑定は済んでいます。間違いなく本人の書いたものです。あなたの後を引き継いで以来、ほとんど休みなしの状態ですよ。
Look at this design,
ノーマン
man.
でも偉くなったもんだな。
その呼び名はやめてもらいます。私たちはもう上司でも部下でもないんですから。
Fair
おい
enough.
おい、マルテン。
あの時、我々がどれほど苦労したか分かってないようですね。せっかく時間をかけて逮捕寸前までこぎつけた連続殺人犯を酒によってあなたが射殺してしまった。
Is
あの後始末の苦労。
this Askeladd's voice? Maybe?
ノロマのマルティンがいつからそんなに手が良くなりやがった。執筆中の論文か。
About?
悲劇の誕
The
生、
birth of
家庭
tragedy.
と実在、世界観の心理学。なるほど。哲学家の素晴らしい本棚だ。
Oh,
僕
beautiful.
らが今書いてた論文の資料か。これはガリア戦記じゃないか。なんで一冊だけ関係ない本が。
Go on.
まっさらな本なのにここだけアンダーライン。
誰だろうと迷惑なんですよ。明日レポートの提出日なのに、隣の騒ぎのおかげでここんとこ集中できなかったんだから。
Looks quite old for a student.
じゃあ一つだけ。
隣の彼、友人はそんなにいなかったみたいです。
Yeah, there was one
おう
potentially
もういいで
that
すね。
passed off as a
ちょっ
friend.
とあと一つだけ。
できない。これ以上。欺く。
Ah. Yeah, that's right.
なんだっけそれ。できない。これ以上欺くことは
From his note.
どこかで聞いたことがあるぞ。
君もここが好きなのかい？
いやあ、君は確かヨハン。
上がっておいでよ。ここからの方がもっと景色がよく見える。
Interesting.
うわ、
Yeah.
ちょっと怖いな。
怖くなんかないさ。
Oh.
おい、よせ。よせったら。よせったら危ないよ。
よくここへ来るの？
Rock solid.
ああ。この時間になると家に明かりが灯り出すだろう。家族が家に帰ってくる。どこからともな
Mm.
く
Yeah.
夕げの匂いがしてくる。憧れなんだ、僕の。
憧れ？
ああ、僕は子供の頃からそういうのなかったから。君の家族ってどうだった？
There's that bridge.
実は僕、子供の頃から里親に引き取られて。
よかったら聞かせてくれないか？
え？
君の話。
Okay.
これが僕の生い立ちさ。ちょっと湿っぽくなっちゃったけど。
Let's have a look at Johan.
不思議だ。君が相手だと
Eh.
何でも
Oh
話せちゃう。
god.
今の君の話、 大金持ちの父親ってシューバルトのことかい？
Hey, Johan's little pat on the back.
僕のために
He is, but
泣いてくれるのか？
that's my immediate thought is this the real thing? Potentially crocodile tears?
もし僕が彼に本当のことを告げたら、きっと彼は僕のことを金目当てで現れた男だと思うだろう。
Though of course he's got the
シューバルトは
memento.
そういう人間だ。すべては金だ。
でもなんとかしなきゃ。あなたの実の父親が絶望の淵で苦
In
しん
the
でいる
abyss
の
of
よ。
despair. All these kids.
なるほど、そういうことか。
え？
それならいい考えが。
Look at this. Oh wow, it's just like the ending. The new ending I got in the last episode, right? The monster surrounded by kids.
聞いてるんですか、シューバルトさん。元気がないようですけど。
もういいんだ。
もし彼の死が自殺でないとしたら、あなたの身にも危険が降りかかるかもしれない。
彼は私の息子だったんだ。
彼は偽物です。
Yeah, but he might not
確か
care,
にファー
right?
レンは人が良くて、作業を働くような人間じゃなかった。だが現に彼はあなたを騙そうとした。背後にある何かもっと大きな悪意をね。
Careful though, careful.
人生には二度とやり直しの効かないことがある。君にわかるかね？
わかります。よーくね。
Really interesting to see that shot of Johan and the kids.
そう、弱者たる子供の人権を守るための国際的保障の共通基準とでも言うかな。とは言っても、施設の子供の世話をするこのボランティアは、それとは関係なく好きでやってるんだけどね。
さっきの話の続き聞かせてよ。
Yeah, do
シュー
tell.
バルトが過去3回破産して、
ああ、その3回とも一時的に失踪し、そして再び姿を現したとき、
Back on top.
猛然と巻き返しを図っている。
その失踪していた時の行き先も聞いたの？
ああ、
Ooh.
そこに彼を連れて行けばいいってことね。
誰にでも元気になれる場所はある。例えば、君が大学の屋上から家並みを眺めるようにね。
ファーレンってどっちの子だい？
Blonde.
2組来たんだよ。シューバルトの息子だっていうのがね。
Two pairs.
ブロンドの方かい？それとも黒髪の方かい？
黒髪と女の子。
He's got the photos.
その二
Bust
人
him
って
out.
まさかこの
池は見えるか？森の紅葉は美しいか？
Yeah, they seem like
とても。
it's not there anymore, is it? Oh god. Ugh. Yeah. Cold. Industrial.
聞こえないですか？
Always shows up, always.
よーく耳を澄ましてみてください。こんなに美しく泣いているのに、木立の中にリンゴがたくさん落ちているんですね。
Okay. Maybe you can paint a lovely picture for him. Did he just have that in his pocket, or?
なんという光景だ。
Interesting body
こんな
language.
西日を受けて燃え上がるようです。それが鏡のように静かな水面に映し出されて
That paints a picture, all right.
見えるでしょう。こんな光景があったなんて。
Oh. Oh.
見える。見えるよ。
Ooh, I just got chills. These are real tears for sure.
ここに現れたのは2組。
Yeah, pairs.
黒髪の青年は女の子
Who
を
did
連れてきた。
Edmund bring?
ファーレンも一人で来たんじゃないのか。
Johan,
ああ、ブロンドの方も二人連れだ。
another pretty blonde.
あんたの言うそのファーレンって子は
Yeah.
ろくに喋れなかったよ。友達と名乗ってる青年の方が詳しい話をし始めた。
Describe him. Go on.
そいつがもしシューバルトの息子だって名乗れば、私は信じたね。
誰なんだそいつは。
Cut to. Oh, that caught me off guard. I was really into that. Okay, episode 26. I mean, that's a fantastic episode. You know, essentially everything I was kind of hoping for, after kind of understanding or learning that, this is going to be a focus on Johan and these characters, but specifically getting a much more intimate look, a much more personal look at Johan, right? Johan in the flesh, rather than Johan as this specter. And, of course, I've touched up on this point a bit in the last discussion. Up until recently, 26 episodes in now, there's been really quite a distinct understanding of Johan's character. And a lot of that is through third-party encounters. And a lot of that is through, third-party encounters. It's never been a direct look at Johan for us, the audience. Urasawa clearly made a choice here to keep the audience at an arm's distance, right? Keep them at bay for a solid chunk of the series, right? 26 episodes in, that's pretty solid at this point. To then give us an episode like this, right? It's a little bit jarring, isn't it? Especially because the way he presents himself, because I do believe everything he does is deliberate. This is a person who preps for everything. I think you kind of actually get to see it throughout this episode, just how ready he is for all of this, right? That's how effective it's been. That I don't really need to see him planning for all of this. I just know that's the type of individual he is. That's why he's so damn effective. That's why he's always 2 steps ahead, right? Perhaps at some point he might just become 1 step ahead, right? Maybe at some point they might find themselves on the same page, right? Him and Tenma, and Nina as well, perhaps Anna. But yeah, you really get to see how this man functions in this episode, and that is just kind of thrilling. Because yes, it's been established that he is this master manipulator because he's got such an understanding for, the human heart. He's got such an understanding for people, all kinds of people. Though of course, it also kind of feels like he does target a specific type of person, right? You look at poor Edmund, my God, Johan did a number on him. He had him. My God, he had him so easily as well, didn't he? And of course, there's another person in this episode, a new character, Richard, Detective Richard, who I do like. I like the addition of this character, and it kind of continues that element of, using a detective and his approach and his findings as a narrative tool, and it's been so effective. And then in this episode, that approach becomes even more effective and even more fascinating because there's this really, really interesting narrative dichotomy going on here, right? Because you're getting to see 2 sides, right? Of course, you get that ending, quite the ominous ending. He's essentially gone deep enough into the rabbit hole at this point that I'm concerned. I'm concerned for Detective Richard. I feel that soon enough he is going to register on Johan's radar, that he is going to become ensnared, much like Edmund. So, at this point, I am kind of thinking about the odds of this new character making it out alive by the end of the story arc. If you're asking my opinion at this point, I'd say the odds are kind of low for him, right? He's just kind of barking up the wrong trees at this point. Again, from his perspective, maybe the right trees. By the end of that episode, you see that he is now already a bit too deep into it, right? He's a bit too dialed in. He's too locked in at this point. But going back to my point about having 2 sides to this, right? You've got Richard's investigation, and then you've got Johan in the flesh around these new characters. But through Richard's findings and, his investigation, you do kind of get a look at the darker forces or the darker force at work with Edmund's alleged suicide, right? I mean, of course, even Edmund was not just randomly picked, right? You know, the fact that he's meant to look like Johan, and the fact that they actually use that to bamboozle us for that twist in the last episode as well, right? Yeah, of course, it's not a chance thing that, you know, he also happens to be someone that can be considered blonde that's kind of pretty, right? It's by design. Because I feel that even though, you know, he's kind of focused on this right now, he's always kind of thinking about the bigger picture. That's always in his mind, right? So, you know, there's even this possibility that getting someone that fits the bill, that fits the description of Johan, essentially, he also kind of set up this potential of, you know, someone running into this. You know, maybe someone picks up on this lead. Oh, that does kind of sound like Johan. This does kind of sound like something Johan could be capable of, and he certainly fits a description. To then, you know, find out that no, it's just someone else. It's Edmund Farhan, right? That could throw people off the trail. But yeah, by the end of it, you see that the lovely fake Margot confirms that, yeah, it's all been Johan, right? Edmund didn't really even do much talking. But the thing is, the moment the actual sun comes into the picture, Edmund's out of the picture almost immediately. But on the flip side of the darker force that is Johan, you get to see this really, really likable side of Johan, right? Finally, in the flesh, you get to see just why people do the things that they do for Johan, or are manipulated into doing the things that they do for Johan. You know, this is a really impressive young man, tender and caring. I mean, at times he feels almost magical, because I'm looking at Carl's face, and, you know, by the end of it, he must be really thinking, is this a real person? You know, he feels like he's too good to be true. So, you know, there you have something interesting as well. You know, something I'm really excited about for the next episode is essentially a check-in with Carl and his stance on Johan, his thoughts on Johan, right? Hell, you know, throughout this episode, I don't think I'm imagining this. I feel like there is even this sense of a romantic angle. There's a few standout moments, I think, you know, the way he looks at Carl from time to time. You know, there's that moment, that really tender moment as he reaches out for him and grabs his hand. You know, it's not, I don't know, it's a bit further than just a handshake, because it certainly felt a bit more empathetic, a bit more intimate, the way he grabbed his hand, Carl's hand. And listen, yes, you know, they try a bit of a fake out there. But of course, I'm sure most of us are not expecting Johan to kill him at that moment. But yes, you know, there is a constant sense of danger at all times. And of course, that hint of danger is established through some of the shot selections, right? The shot direction, misdirection, of course. But yeah, it kind of leans into, you know, that aspect of, okay, you know, there is this slim possibility that Johan could, if he wanted to, if he truly wanted to at that point, Carl's at his mercy. You know, he could push him over. He could kill him. But again, you know, it doesn't make sense at that point. So at no point did I actually feel that he's going to kill him. But, you know, that's how the scene is presented at times as well. You know, there's that first person look down the steep fall. But no, you know, there's no chance Carl was going to die at that point, because he's clearly a part of Johan's plans for now at least, right? And he certainly made quite the impression on Carl. But let's focus on the ending phase of this episode. You know, before the final scene, you get an incredible scene. I mean, you know, I believe there's two masterful moments in this episode. You know, the rooftop moment, and then of course that moment, the forest moment for Hans Schubert. I mean, listen, regardless of ulterior motives, he did something so special for that man, right? He did. And, you know, at a point, there's a shot of Johan, right? He just felt so calm. I don't know, he just felt at peace. It's possible that he might have been thinking about his own place, that special place, right? You get to see Carl's special place as he reminds Carl on that bench, and he gives him that look. Maybe Johan has a place like that as well. But I think this whole moment of really doing something quite special for Schubert, yeah, it's probably done quite a bit for him in terms of establishing trust, right? Or someone that can be trusted. You know, at this point, I'm pretty sure that, of course, at the least, Schubert has taken much more interest in Johan, right? Going into the next episode or two. So, of course, from the ulterior motive standpoint, it's going flawlessly, isn't it? But, you know, then the scene itself, you know, him just painting such a vivid picture for Schubert of this forest, it brought the man to tears. I thought it's a really powerful scene, actually. I mean, clearly he's done all of his research. I'm sure he was able to find out the exact type of apple that was known to be found in that forest. And then, of course, that physical apple and the taste of that apple, the smell of that apple really assisted in transporting Schubert. The taste of emotion, if you will, right? The use of sensory imagery, the use of gustatory imagery. I mean, by the end of this episode, you can truly, truly believe everything that's been, said about Johann. Him being a master manipulator, him being so persuasive, right? So endearing, so charming, tender and kind and caring, all of that. This is something he has fine-tuned, and he's got it down to an art. He really does. And, the thing is, there's moments here that even though, for the most part, you always kind of have to think that, this is deliberate, it's by design. There's a few moments that do make you think, okay, this is maybe an interesting new side to Johann, or at least for us, the audience, it might be a first look at it, be it him being around those children, being surrounded by those children, right? An immediate callback to the new ending I got recently in the last episode, right? The monster surrounded by children. But of course, at that moment, once the monster kind of felt safe enough to come back out, you see that the children are really quite afraid and they make a run for it. But before the monster feels that it can finally show itself, and is still essentially in the form of that human, you see that the children just love him, right? Surrounding him. Much is the case in this scene. The children just love and adore Johann, right? And the thing is, I do believe that he actually does care. I think a part of him certainly cares for these orphans. Again, he is a law major, so that Bill of Rights, the Children's Bill of Rights, I do think he legitimately cares. I don't think he wants another Johann. I don't think he wants these children to have the same type of, childhood that he had. He wants them to have good childhoods, experience good childhoods, right? Have opportunities. Don't think he wants these children to suffer like he did or his sister did. I think he does want stability for these children, a better future for these children. And that also kind of takes me back to that really significant moment, really interesting moment back on the rooftop, right? As I do see Johann crying, right? He is moved. He appears to be emotionally moved. He appears to be empathizing with Carl, right? And that was one of the talking points from the last episode's discussion, right? Because Carl does have a really similar background and upbringing or childhood, right? Or the lack of a proper childhood that both of them kind of longed for or hoped for. So, given everything I know about Johann up until this point, of course, the moment I see him crying, my first thought is, okay, is this an act? Are these crocodile tears? But, again, I feel that it's essentially a mix of the two things. I do feel that maybe a part of it, or essentially a majority of this showing, is crocodile tears. But I think there is a part of him that can empathize, that is crying or is emotional at that point for both of their childhoods. So I think maybe a part of him, even if it is a small part, might have actually felt something there, right? And again, it'll be interesting to see how this story arc unfolds, right? And, his, plans for Carl, right? Because you see that essentially he makes Carl sing like Johnny Cash up there, just like that. You notice how he barely speaks. He lets the others do all the talking. He just knows how to get them to yap. He knows how to get them to open up. And there is a really interesting moment as he's doing his balancing act, almost as if to tell Carl that you're safe here. There's no danger here, right? It almost kind of puts him at ease after that moment. And he, like I said, sings like Johnny Cash, gives him his whole life story. Now, I think a question to ask here is, okay, did he mention this memento of his that really distinguishes him as the true son, the biological son of Hans Schubert, right? I mean, I think he must have mentioned it. Even if it is off screen, you could infer that, surely he must have mentioned it. So that gives Johann perhaps this really big opening, right? Something he can really use, right? Now, again, it depends how exactly he plans on proceeding, right? Could he possibly try to, take that memento for himself and maybe eliminate Carl from the picture? I don't know. I just don't get the feeling, I mentioned in the last discussion, I don't get the feeling that he's trying to pass off as Schubert's son, because he would have done it already if that was the plan. So I don't think that's the angle he's going to take here. But going back to the moment in the park, that standout moment, him being surrounded by children, I mean, it's a striking shot. I'd say it's one of the standout moments, or, memorable imagery from the anime so far. It really is. It truly is. Listen, I don't know how others perceive that. On first thought, your first thoughts on the matter. I can only speak for myself, and I honestly, I didn't really get a creepy feeling from it. Him being around those children, I don't know. I maybe I'll be wrong about this, but I really truly felt that he does care about these children, right? Because again, given their circumstances, in comparison to his own upbringing, he finds himself in a position, right, to actually maybe potentially do something about it. Maybe he is actually trying to be the person that a young Johann maybe hoped for growing up in his childhood. Maybe he hoped for someone like this, someone that could help him out. I mean, listen, the fact that it is a direct reference to the ending I got in the last episode, yes, maybe it is a little bit ominous in that sense, right? But I don't feel like these children are in danger or anything. I don't think he's out here using them for nefarious purposes. At least I don't think so. I mean, listen, Johann is this really experimental individual, isn't he? I mean, it's been firmly set up at this point, right? If you go back to Kinderheim, you go back to 5 years ago, right? The bank that he had. So yeah, listen, maybe there could be something at play here, but there's a lot of comparisons to be made here as well. Specifically between Tenma and Johann, right? Their relationship with children. I think that's certainly going to play a part, right? Given Tenma and Dieter's relationship, and now kind of, showcasing or hinting at Johann's own connection with children. So I do need to see a bit more before I can, really kind of comment on that and kind of construct some thoughts on that matter. But, it's certainly there. It's there for sure as a talking point, as a significant talking point at some point. But then also, you look at this, you look at the setup of, okay, look at Tenma, right? He's this man on the run for murder, right? The perception of Tenma is of someone that is dangerous, right? Someone unpleasant, really quite unpleasant, someone capable of murder, right? But then, of course, all of us know, right? The audience knows, and the people that know Tenma, within the story itself know, of course, that is so far from the individual that is Dr. Tenma, Kenzo Tenma, right? Now you kind of get to see something similar at play. There's been a really specific picture painted of Johann up until this point, right? The type of person he is, how he carries himself, this looming presence, this looming ominous presence, that he's this terrifying individual. And listen, he is all of those things. He is. Let's not forget all of that. I'm not forgetting any of that. But, the way he presents himself is, again, kind of similar to the Dr. Tenma situation, right? The perception is one thing, but once you actually get to know him, once you actually get to see Dr. Tenma in the flesh, and get to really experience the human that he is, yeah, it's night and day. And it's the same. It's the same. Even if it is an act, even if it is this fake personality that he puts on display, it's the same type of situation, isn't it? But in terms of Johann's disposition, it kind of takes me back to the doctor that our new character goes to see. I mean, the doctor himself is also a new character, but apparently, because of his years of experience, he has this knack for, kind of getting a solid read on people just based on their appearances, right? Even in a photograph, as Richard does present the photo of the late Edmund, and essentially he's spot on, absolutely spot on, and everything he's describing about Edmund is essentially clashing with everything that's happened to Edmund, right? This doctor did not believe at all that he's capable of any of those things. But my initial point is about him ever potentially kind of getting to, analyze a photo of Johann. Now, of course, that's nearly impossible because, a photo of Johann is not something that is common, right? But, it's food for thought. It could be interesting to see how he actually perceives him, right? Though, there's a few other possibilities. Richard could bring photos of Lotte or Carl to this doctor to get his read on them. But, as far as Richard and his investigation, that red book he finds, right? Even that felt a little bit too perfect, didn't it? Because really, it would have been so easy to just take the book, for Johann to just take that book, right? The one that really sticks out like a sore thumb from that bookshelf. And, Edmund must have been from quite a wealthy family, because that's quite the bookshelf for a college student, right? These textbooks, they must have been expensive. And he's got a lot of them. And it's not just textbooks, but still, that's quite the bookshelf. I mean, there's a good chance that Johann actually wanted that book to be found, and he wanted those, or that passage that is underlined to be found, right? Again, it is the passage that is found in the suicide note, right? And then, of course, he does take it to Hans Schubert, who doesn't really care much, right? You see that he's more than happy to accept that, yeah, that was my son, right? He's overlooking a lot of things, by choice, of course. Now, listen, a lot of that being said, and yes, I'm enjoying Johann so much, and I have enjoyed him so much up until this point. The thing is, at some point, I am going to need some sort of backstory, some sort of story arc, or perhaps even over the span of the rest of the series. I do need to actually see how he became the person that he is. Why he is the way he is. I mean, yes, they confirm that he's been like this since a really early age, going all the way back to, the Kinderheim days, right? Monstrous charisma and all of that. But, part of me kind of needs to see how he became that person or that kid, so enjoying it is one thing, but I do also need to kind of know how exactly he became this charismatic individual that he is. Devastatingly effective. But yeah, after the setup of the last episode, I was really quite excited to see these mannerisms in the flesh, right? How he is around people. And it did not disappoint, man. It did not. To get to see his mannerisms and his empathetic disposition, at least from a certain perspective, even if it is an act that he puts on, it's still fascinating, isn't it? I mean, he appears to be so intuitive with people's feelings. For that reason, being able to manipulate these people really quite easily. But yeah, I think that should do it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're interested in early access or timer-based full length or full opacity, consider checking out the Patreon page and potentially supporting the channel. The links are in the description and the pinned comment, also links to social media, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 27. Till then, take it easy.